on platforms other than what you're watching, the Zoom, setting up the meeting and getting ready to go. All right. All right. You're live everywhere. And we welcome you. And I walk into the spotlight here. And what do I do next? I light a candle. Can you see me?
Yes.
Good. And the reason I ask that is because my indispensable right arm, Amar Ahmad, who is our Zoom tech, beautiful new addition to our team, is homesick with a stomach flu. And we miss you, Amar, and I especially miss you having to be the fake minister and fake Zoomster all at once.
Can you turn your volume up?
No, probably not. Without a wire.
There we go. There we go. That's the first obstacle. And then to sing a song that I've sung twice this week. Once in Agunquit, Maine, for the kickoff of the Veterans for Peace walk that's coming through Boston in 2 days. And second was yesterday at the big standout we had at Theodore Parker Church about Gaza. And here I sing it again. It says, if I stood out in the rain night, my only light a candle, 1,000,000 miles away, would you lay down your fire as I raised mine? Would you not kill again? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. If I walked as one of many more, my only time the present, now and here, would you undo those bombs, one for each step taken, and let a future draw near? And oh, when you're near me, oh my love, oh my joy, there's nothing ever to weary me, oh my darling one. We light this candle this morning for all you mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day. I'm feeling bereft. My wife and the mother of my son is in England, and my mother I lost 2 weeks ago. So I'm dedicating this tiny candle that I'll let a little bit of wax out so it'll be bigger, to Ruth Stevens. She is resting. She is in the arms of my dad in the great beyond. And I dedicate this to all you mothers out there. And I also am very happy to welcome this morning our sweet friends in Middleburg, New York, Magpie, also known as Greg Artzner and Terry Leonino. It's always such a sweet thing to have you on our TV screen, and I hope we can have you soon here live in person. Folks, welcome for the opening song, Magpie.
Thank you so much, Dean, and thank you all for being here today. Well, we feel on Mother's Day we need to recognize this beautiful mother planet of ours. And we were just celebrating the Clearwater and the Hudson River yesterday at the Earth Fair. So we're going to start with a Pete Seeger song. It says, one blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shores, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race. It's too soon to die. You can do the sign language with me too. And it goes like this.
One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shore, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race. It's too soon to die. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shore, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race. It's too soon to die. Now some folks want to be like an ostrich, bury their heads in the sand.
Some folks hope that plastic dreams can unclench all these greedy hands.
Some folks want to take the easy way, poisons, bombs, they think we need them.
Don't you know you can't kill all the unbelievers? There's no shortcut to freedom.
One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shore, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try. Please, it's too soon to die. Go tell all the little children, go tell all the mothers and fathers too.
Now's our last chance to learn to share what's been given to me and you.
One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shore, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more? And because I love you, I'll give it one more try to show my rainbow race. It's too soon to die. One blue sky above us, one ocean lapping all our shore, one earth so green and round, who could ask for more?
Thank you, Terry and Greg. Thank you so much. I hope you see me. I just changed the camera
I
over
do see
to
you.
the
I do
laptop.
see you.
Usually Amar is back here, and I'm going back and forth. Hope you don't mind,
No.
and hope you indulge me while I read This from Julia Ward Howe,
Julia
1870, Mother's Day Proclamation. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or of tears. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, mercy, and patience. We women of one country will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. As men have often forsaken the plow and the anvil at the summons of war, let women now leave all that may be left of home for a great and earnest day of council. Let them meet first as women to bewail and commemorate the dead. Let them then solemnly take counsel with each other as to the means whereby the great human family can live in peace. Each learning after his own time the sacred impress, not of Caesar, but of God. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a general Congress of women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at some place deemed most convenient and at the earliest period consistent with its objects to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace. Julia Ward Howe, Mother's Day Proclamation, 1870. Julia Ward Howe, the great abolitionist, feminist, women's hero for all of us. This is a moment to...
And composer.
What was that?
And writer of the Battle Hymn of the Republic.
And author of the Battle Hymn of the Republic. Yes, I forgot that little piece of bio. Some announcements. This Tuesday, as I mentioned before, the Vets for Peace walk coming from Maine on its way to Washington, D.C. will make a stop at Community Church of Boston. Join us at 7. This event will be live streamed as well. And we will receive them, and we will hopefully send them to some places where they can sleep in an actual bed, because they're prepared to camp out on the floor of the church, but we're hoping to get them a shower and a good night of rest before they continue on their walk. That's Tuesday. Wednesday night is our board meeting. Members and invited guests are free to attend. And of course, board members, we are discussing a whole bunch of pretty momentous things around our finances, especially what with the vacant restaurant space on the first floor. We're going through some things. It's just a temporary blip on the screen. We are blessed with this building, which is our enormous headache, as well as our reason for survival and for sustenance. Then there is Thursday. Maura Smiley is a force of nature to be reckoned with. We really are very happy to welcome a concert by Maura Smiley and Shelter Music, which is an organization here in Boston whose purpose is to bring top-notch, beautiful music to vulnerable, underserved folks, like in hospitals, prisons, homeless shelters, institutions. Shelter Music, and that is a string quartet that will accompany Maura Smiley in original and traditional folk song. Do not miss Maura Smiley. I can hardly wait. I'm so excited about that. We have also on Saturday, Betsy Rose. Betsy Rose, who was just a driving force in the late 70s and 80s of the women's music movement.
We lost your microphone, Dean.
No mic. You're still off.
The battery probably died. I'll be back in a second.
It's a little red button that means it's a dead battery. Now you can't see my video because I forgot to change it before I came up here doing double duty. But I was telling you about Betsy Rose on Saturday, wonderful author of such songs as "We may have come here on different ships, but we're on the same boat now." Don't miss Betsy Rose either. Sunday, we have two members of the church and one good friend who will be doing a program about their experience as alumni of the PIC. That would be the Prison Industrial Complex. And I am so excited to hear from the three of them. It's just a part of what we do here. We have 10 prison members, we call them members behind bars, that we correspond with and send tiny amounts of money order at Christmas time. So join us next Sunday for these three members, Calvin Airy, Lee Underwood, and Don Wright. I can't help but tell you about the other event, which is May 24th, the Friday after that. Oh, we're just so chock full. I forgot to tell you about May 20th. We will be remotely live streaming the address by Linda Dittmar. Linda Dittmar, who grew up in Palestine before it became Israel. She's about 83 years old and wrote a wonderful book that's called Tracing Homelands. And it's about her experience taking trips to Israel in the early 2000s, looking for traces of Palestine. It's a marvelous book. I couldn't stop reading it. That event will happen at the Theodore Parker Unitarian Universalist Church in West Roxbury, and it will be live streamed on this same Zoom link and YouTube channel. That's May 20th, Monday, May 20th at 7 p.m. And then the one I was just all excited to tell you about is Friday, May 24th, and that's Dean Stevens' 70th birthday benefit concert for Community Church. Don't miss that one. And I wrote a little bio for myself, which starts by saying, Dean Stevens is a living legend in his own twisted mind, obsessed with his own sense of self-importance. He is somewhat tempered by a raucous gang of friends who, if they show up, will keep him at bay as he sings a set of songs for you, accompanied by special guests Rob Flax, amazing showman and violinist and multi-instrumentalist, and Eric Kilburn, mandolinist and studio engineer extraordinaire. That's Friday, May 24th. So lots of stuff coming up. One final thing I really need to tell you is that we were going to have May 26th, Jill Stein and Miko Peled. They both had to cancel, unfortunately, but not cancel, postpone. And that will be a conversation that we will host sometime this summer. It's hard pinning down a presidential candidate whose schedule is constantly changing, and Miko's schedule as well changed. There was a very important Palestine conference he had to attend in Detroit on that weekend. So instead, we are graced with the poet Ketu Oladua, who was here just a couple weeks ago. And we so looked forward to recording his concert and having it on our YouTube channel, because it's just he's a elder statesman of poetry and Black liberation. He lives in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and he will join us remotely. And we're going to do him again because we totally messed up the recording. You can't even hear him. He's overwhelmed by his wonderful musicians who were with him. But we will do this again on Sunday, May 26th. lots of great stuff coming up here at Community Church. But before we go on, we want to invite Magpie to give us another tune. Greg and Terry.
We'll be there in 1 second. We were thinking about different songs, and can you see us? Can you see us? Oh, there we are.
There we are. Yes.
So we were thinking about this song because of Mother's Day and
Mother's Day.
Many connections.
Your mother, Dean. And in fact, this song came out of the loss of my mother back in 2014. It's mind-boggling to me to think that she's been gone for 10 years. But after we had performed 2 nights after my mother died at the Walkabout Clearwater Coffee House that evening, and it was also happened to be the first concert after the death of Pete Seeger. And so all those Pete Seeger folks, all of our Pete Seeger family and Clearwater family that were there. What a night, you know. And at the end of the night, one of the volunteers came up and offered this idea, this thought. He was, as it turned out, a bereavement counselor and rabbi, and talked about the image of the lamplighter in your life. Your mother is the lamplighter of your life. Throughout your entire life, she goes down the street with her wick and lights the lamps on either side of the road. So that this song drew out of that. And so thank you, Charlie Rabinowitz, for that. All along the city streets in the darkening night comes a solitary figure carrying a light. From a lamppost to lamppost, back and forth across the lane, one by one each lamp is lit with that wick of flame. Soon the street is sparkling bright, casting shadows everywhere, but the lamplights beam as beacons for all who venture there. They shine into the heart and mind from their place high above, dispelling fear. They show the way like the power of love. And it's your love that made my life like sunlight on the line, or the lamplights along the pathway that will forever shine, forever shine. Your mother's love and her mother's before go on like an endless river through your love for us, our daughters and sons. That love will last forever. And it's your love that made my life like sunlight on the line, or the lamplights along the pathway that will forever shine. And it's your love that made our life like sunlight on
Thank you.
Yes. Lamplight. Funny thing, I was, let me spotlight here. As I was looking for some batteries for this cordless mic, I found something that I wanted to share with you that was lost. And in looking for that, I found this, which is a picture of Mom. And it's an Andy Warhol treatment of my mom, who had the most raucous laughter, infectious laughter that filled the room like no one else's. And she's got a bunch of hairdos. This is the artwork of my niece Nicole in California, and that's Mom. She's resting in peace. Shoshana, what was that word I wanted to say? When to say she had a good life and a good death, you say Baruch Hashem. But blessed of God, anything can happen. And this lady's faith in God is far surpasses her son's, believe me. And I don't say that to slight anyone whose faith leads them. I say it to honor my mom. Honor my mom. So I'm gonna see if I can switch the what's it called, the spotlight to the stage. Oh no, now I remember. Here I use this. I go here to swip the spotlight to the stage. Oh yeah, I'm getting good at this. So that I can introduce Shoshana Friedman, and I will give you her full title. Shoshana Meira, Rabbi Shoshana Meira Friedman. I've known Shoshana since she was a teenager. I've sung house concert at her family's home in Newton. I am just, this is an amazing family. Her father, Lev, is a rabbi as well. And it's a very musical family. Lev is a songwriter and a musician. And Shoshana's two sisters are amazing musicians, cello and violin. And Shoshana is a songwriter herself, and she will share some songs with us as we get double treat to hear Shoshana's message as well as her songs this morning. So glad that you could join us. She's also my neighbor, and I look forward to seeing her and family at the farmers market a whole bunch this summer. It starts in a couple of weeks. I call that my other church, which is to have a little farm stand where we sell coffee and crafts from El Salvador. And Shoshana lives only a couple blocks from there and is a regular attendee with her boy Abraham that I think you're going to hear a whole bunch more about. So thank you, Shoshana, for joining us this morning.
Here, maybe here.
How about there for the music and here for the...
Yeah, perfect. Is this on?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's on.
okay.
It's on. And music, standing guitar or sitting?
I can do standing.
Okay. Okay, good. I'll come adjust those.
Great. Can they hear me through this mic?
Charlie?
Can you guys all hear me on Zoom?
Charlie, can we be heard?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
She could be a little bit louder.
Good morning, every small crowd in person, and to everybody else who's I cannot see, but I know you can see me. And thank you so much to Dean for inviting me. I'm Rabbi Shoshana Meira Friedman. I'm a writer, singer, and activist and mom. And these days I'm a full-time mom home with a child you'll hear a lot about. And I have recently become a coach, an influencer on neurodiversity and a specific profile of autism called PDA, which we'll also learn a little bit about. So I've had a bit of a career and life shift that I'm rolling with. So today I'm going to share a personal story. It's a bit different than the kinds of sermons I used to give when I was a congregational rabbi. And I want to be clear that it's my story. And I know that there are other autistic people here, as well as I'm sure listening. And all of us, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person, and we all have our own unique stories and relationships to our brains and our differences and disabilities and life stories. So everyone else's story is just as important and valid as mine. And also, I want to say that in this sermon, I'll be referencing the biblical story of the Israelites wandering in the Sinai wilderness and receiving Torah, which is a core sacred story in Jewish tradition. And that's the story with the whole Mount Sinai revelation. So 3 years ago, a neuropsychologist assessed our son, who was then 3, and called a few weeks later to tell us he was autistic. I was so relieved, which may sound like an unusual, but actually very common experience for many of us. My son was verbally precocious. He made intense eye contact, was very charismatic and social, and so didn't look like a stereotypical presentation of what the media says autism looks like. He also loved being read a wall calendar or a Hebrew English dictionary as a bedtime story. He struggled with transitions and had unpredictable meltdowns. He ran in circles around his preschool classroom, seeking sensory input he wasn't getting. Bedtime in those years when he was 2 or 3 could take 2 manic hours of struggle. Like my Israelite ancestors, my family was in an unknown wilderness, and we were ready to receive some Torah. Except that the Torah, so to speak, that the doctor gave to us, who had just diagnosed our kid, didn't seem right. He was recommending behavioral interventions focused on changing what our son outwardly did without any interest in understanding the reasons behind his struggles. As the doctor spoke, my heart raced and my body tensed. I thought about a white friend of mine in the process of adopting a Black child. My friend had told me how she would be listening to the voices of Black adoptees of white parents, who were the people closest to her soon-to-be daughter's lived experience. I realized that while I completely trust conventional doctors about vaccines and disease and science and all that, I could not rely on their Torah when it came to raising my autistic son. I needed an autistic Torah to guide my family's journey through this neurodivergent land. So that night, shoulders tense, after another day of meltdowns and difficult transitions, I opened my laptop to a parenting forum where someone recommended a Facebook group that was led by autistic adults whose goal was simply educating caregivers of autistic children. My heart lifted. Why hadn't the doctor mentioned this? For the next month, I curled around my laptop every evening like a glowing fire in the Sinai desert, listening to stories and perspectives that widened the narrow views of autism I'd been fed by doctors and media. I learned that the underlying different information processing that makes autism distinctive does not lead to a few narrow profiles, but rather to people who are widely diverse, likely more diverse than the range of neurotypical brains, but who all share categories of difference or disability in a bunch of areas, including social interaction, communication, repetition and routine, sensory processing, cognitive processing. Contrary to stereotypes, these differences can be obvious to an external observer, or they can be internalized, camouflaged, and masked. I also learned that most pediatricians, therapists, and psychologists are barely trained in autism at all, and those who are really just looking at stereotypical presentations of autism and still through a pathological lens. And this is despite decades of research that have expanded our understanding of this complex neurotype. Around these campfires, I also learned that autism is what's called a dynamic disability. This means that my son's need for support and accommodations would likely vary throughout the day, the month, depending on his accumulated stress, the environment. He could be more or less disabled given a lot of factors. I also learned that there's a global autistic community depathologizing autism. Not that it isn't hard to be autistic, not that it doesn't often co-occur with medical disorders that do need treatment, but that being autistic certainly does not need treatment. It isn't something to try to fix. It's a valid, though very challenging way of being human, a disability that comes with different levels of challenge depending on the person and different strengths. I learned that, of course, all autistics, like anybody, deserve the right accommodations to live well, that those accommodations can be wildly diverse depending on the person. Most important, I learned from these autistic adults that if I want to be an ally to my autistic son, my goal needed to be to gift him with a positive autistic identity and explore autistic strategies to help him regulate, communicate, meet his basic needs, and find a light in his life. Very different than the behavioral interventions that would just try to make him look or present less autistic. I learned that indeed to train him to act more neurotypically, especially at a young age, would actually be training him to ignore the distress signals of his body, which puts him at higher risk of abuse, depression, and addiction. I also learned that having a white autistic child allowed me to make very different cost-benefit decisions about his care, and that many Black and brown parents of Black and brown autistic kids do opt to train their children to mask their autism from a young age, not because they're phobic of autism, but because they are heartbreakingly prioritizing their children's physical safety in a country with horrific rates of brutality towards visibly disabled Black and brown bodies. Applying the Torah, so to speak, the wisdom that I learned around that campfire of my laptop, we began to take our child to a neurodivergent affirming occupational therapist, meaning she did not see autism as a problem, just as the operating system of my kid's brain. He helped us interpret his meltdowns. She helped us interpret his meltdowns and opposition as communication about his legitimate sensory and nervous system needs. We began a daily sensory diet, is what it's called, of tight hugs, popsicles, jumping, and rhythmic singing, which all helped him stay in his body and feel calm and safe. We encouraged his passions, which are often called special interests in the autistic community, and we encouraged his atypical modes of play. There were no sticker charts, no rewards, no timeouts, no forced ways of moving his body, only a shared determination to discover what regulated and delighted this small child. As we trusted his body, he trusted his body. By 3.5, my kiddo could identify and say the words, "I'm dysregulated," when he was. By 4, he could point to a picture of what he thought would help him regulate, like jumping, rest, or water. At 5, despite all the sensory accommodations we were offering and everything we had learned about autism, he was still having debilitating panic attacks multiple times a day. And that's when we learned about PDA, which stands for, my preference is pervasive drive for autonomy, but the medical version of it is pathological demand avoidance. It's a profile of autism in which a person, the hypothesis, which I know from lived experience to absolutely be true, is that a PDAer is born with an overactive amygdala threat response that fires off really easily when faced with a lack of autonomy, control, or social equality. And so in children especially, this looks like quote unquote demand avoidance when it's really the threat response firing off and a need for autonomy and safety in the face of the demands of everyday life, which can be quite disabling because even hunger or needing to use the bathroom can be seen as a lack of autonomy. And that's where really intense resistance can come up to these demands, quote unquote. After 5 years of us not knowing that our kid had this particular nervous system disability, the accumulated stress led him to live in near constant fight, flight, or freeze. And eventually he couldn't leave the house or meet basic needs. And that's when we pulled him from school, even though, of course, what school wanted was for us to keep bringing him. This is called PDA burnout. So recognizing that we were privileged to be able to do so, we had no plans of putting him back in school. And I huddled around the laptop campfire again, this time to receive the specific Torah of PDA autism. We began an approach called low demand parenting, which prioritizes your child's nervous system safety and felt sense of connection with you as their caregiver, while dropping all the demands that are too hard on their nervous system and finding creative ways to meet your own needs as an adult in the face of that. We dropped limits on screen time. We turned his bedroom into a sensory gym. We got him on effective medication, which was life-changing, though certainly not sufficient without the other accommodations. Our whole family embraced his special interest of Minecraft, learned how to play, spent hours playing with him, because that's a video game if you don't know, because we knew that special interests are key to autistic healing and well-being and central to the lives of autistic folks. In essence, throughout his burnout, my husband and I refused to put the burden of change on our small child and his vulnerable nervous system. We refused to shoehorn him into the expectations of schooling and what a quote unquote normal or regular or okay version of childhood looks like. And instead, we focused on changing our parenting, our expectations, and the environment of his learning. This was, as we say in Judaism, a tree of life. This was the Torah is a tree of life, and this Torah was truly a tree of life for us. 10 long and hard months later, my son emerged from burnout, meaning he was then able to stay regulated most of the time and meet most of his basic needs without struggle. At only 6 years old, he is now mastering skills that give him a fantastic shot at a healthy and fulfilling life, skills that I honestly wish more adults in the world knew. He knows how to respect and communicate his limits. Whoa. How to learn, socialize, communicate, play, and self-regulate in ways that are native and healthy to his brain. How different the world would be if we all knew that. He identifies as disabled, autistic, and proud. Growing up with autism so normalized in our home, he assumes many of his favorite YouTubers are autistic in much the same way that my great-grandfather in his Jewish pride in the early part of the 20th century assumed that all famous people who were awesome were Jews, like Mozart, clearly. I want to be clear, too, that in the midst of all of this positivity, my child hovers between moderate and high support needs. The disability is real. There are days when we go on long adventures, and there are days when he cannot leave the house. While he uses a university-level vocabulary and can troubleshoot tech issues on Minecraft and YouTube in ways I do not even begin to understand, he also needs a huge amount of support from me and my husband throughout the day. In essence, we are his external nervous systems in much the way that a typical infant needs their parents, but he still needs it at 6.5. Because he had one burnout already, he'll always be at high risk of another. But even throughout these struggles, they do not erase his pride in who and what he is or the joy he finds in his self-knowledge. Pride, acceptance, challenge, and disability can coexist. This is liberation. Now I want to share the other half of my story. What I didn't tell you just now is that when my son started occupational therapy, I loved every minute of it. As he played with his therapist, I rolled around on the gym mat, feeling the weight of my body press against the floor. I never wanted to leave when our time was up. At home, we bought fidget toys, multiple weighted blankets, 2 therapy swings, and I used them more than he did. I began to work on some memoir writing. I was suddenly filled with urgent questions. Why had I always felt so fundamentally different than other humans? How could I master whole bodies of knowledge with ease, teach them back in charismatic, lovely ways, but struggle every day to feed myself lunch? Where had my childhood belief come from that I had to save the world from environmental destruction? A belief so intense it impacted my mental health for decades and every career choice I'd ever made. Why did I always struggle with shopping or going into places with crowds, bright lights, loud noises? Finally, and let me tell you, I'm rather amused it took so long, I thought to ask myself if I might possibly be neurodivergent. My research led me to a list of traits common in autistic women without accompanying cognitive disability. I read this list with my mouth dropped open. There I was on the screen. All-consuming passions, feeling alien among humans, a fantasy of saving the world to make sense of an unexplained feeling of difference since early childhood, hyper-empathy, social anxiety, digestive issues, a preference for teacher over peers, attachment to objects as though they were people, synesthesia, the mixing of your senses. The list was not a diagnostic tool, but friends, I had 160 out of 180 traits. And as I started to unmask, as they say, I had about 170 out of 180 traits. I confirmed myself what's called self-diagnosis in the autistic community through reading accounts from other late diagnosed autistic women. And I eventually got a coveted clinical diagnosis at a center that specializes in assessing adult women and non-binary folks. By the time I learned I was autistic at age 40, I had been an award-winning straight-A student, then educator, then rabbi. I had outwardly excelled at every job I held and took great pride in my creative projects and my passion to make a difference in the world. I had also, throughout, struggled with people-pleasing, social exhaustion, panic attacks, my own burnouts, which had been labeled depression, eating disorders, and debilitating empathy for any suffering animal or person. I lived with near chronic jitters in my chest that I couldn't seem to calm. For 22 years, I had sought help: psychiatry, cognitive behavioral therapy, play-based therapy, trauma-informed therapy, couples therapy, internal family systems therapy. And along the way, I had collected diagnoses like stones in my pocket: generalized anxiety disorder, major depressive disorder, panic disorder, OCD, complex PTSD. In therapy sessions, I was articulate and insightful, if I say so myself, but it often felt like a performance. I was just talking rings around the therapist. Not to mention, I was always jittery and exhausted after being face-to-face with someone for an hour in person talking. I never understood why therapy wasn't working better. Now I knew. Since I hadn't known I was autistic, throughout all these decades of therapy, I had just kept exposing myself to the same level of social and sensory stimulation that was stressful, overwhelming, and ultimately panic-inducing to my nervous system. It was like I was jogging on a sprained ankle, talking to a therapist about it, and then going out to jog again and wondering why the ankle kept hurting. Essentially, I had been receiving psychological interventions and diagnoses for what was fundamentally, for me, a nervous system disability. I'd been wandering around in the wilderness following the wrong life Torah. Over the past year, as this happened, I self-diagnosed a year and a half ago. Over the past year and a half now, I have shed shame and confusion about myself like an old skin and grown a beautiful autistic identity. The strategies, I gotta put my light glasses on. The autistic strategies I learned from other autistics and my son's occupational therapist have done more for my well-being in 1 year than 22 years of therapy combined ever did. These include a positive autistic identity and acceptance of my disabilities, connecting to autistic community, organizing my life around my special interests, giving myself access to soothing sensory stimulation, lots of sleep and rest, using a lot of accommodations for communicating and socializing, including keeping social conversations to a minimum and stopping before I start to feel the jitters start. And often sometimes using text to stay in touch with friends, because speaking, even though I love to do it, can be really stressful for me. It includes respecting my routine and not pushing myself out of my comfort zone out of some need to be moral and good. It includes giving myself deep focus time, and above all, respecting my nervous system's limits without shame, because I finally understand why I have them. My joy and massive relief in my autistic identity does not erase my struggles, nor am I equating my struggles to those of autistics who are more disabled or struggle more than I do. This is, again, a wide-ranging disability. I am simply celebrating. I know who I am now. I finally have the right user manual, the right Torah, for my particular brain and body. It's not an exaggeration to say that discovering I'm autistic has been the single most healing thing to ever happen to me. This is liberation. In closing, I want to say a word about the word inclusion, because I sometimes give this sermon on inclusion Shabbat. In Jewish congregations, there will sometimes be a Shabbat that's particularly around disability justice, and it's often called inclusion Shabbat, and I might come in as a speaker. But it's also a word that is often used in congregations and institutions when talking about disability. So I want to say a word about that word. Everything okay?
Yeah, somebody's unmuted.
That's all right. Can you mute them? Okay. Everybody mute if you're not, please. So in disability justice, the ancestors on whose shoulders I stand when I talk about this, and I'm an advocate, had to start with inclusion, because for centuries, disabled people, especially those who either presented as intellectually disabled or who couldn't speak or both, were literally thrown away from society in horrid institutions, or worse, excluded from basic needs like family, safety, education, autonomy, good food, hygiene, healthcare, any sense of dignity. Since that was our true and despicable starting point when we think about disability in the Western world, the word inclusion is vitally important. All people are sacred. All people are, in my tradition, thought to be in the image of God. We all deserve dignity and to be included in community and society. But once we understand this, in the neurodiversity world, inclusion can start to become a bit problematic because it brings to mind some kind of normal that divergent or disabled people are being paternalistically welcomed into. Like, come, let us include you in real normal society. And I, as you can imagine, have some feelings about that. See, I have had the privilege of passing as non-autistic. My whole life, I've been welcomed into neurotypical spaces, and no one, including myself, knew that I'm disabled. It's a privilege I don't take for granted, believe me. But to tell you the truth, after 41 years of masking being autistic and trying to keep up with neurotypical society, which, as we all know, doesn't actually work even for neurotypical people, I'm a little sick of it. Neurotypical spaces often exhaust and overwhelm me. I feel much safer in autistic spaces these days, in my home, with other neurodivergent friends, in my online communities. I want access to what I need to live well. Everyone deserves access to what they need to live well. And I like that term accessibility a lot. It's extremely important for both hidden and physical disabilities. But for me, inclusion in what passes for normal isn't actually my personal goal anymore. And I'm not saying it can't be yours. I'll give you another example of this inclusion problem. Before he hit that treacherous burnout state, my little boy attended what's called an inclusion classroom in his public school in Boston. But this inclusion classroom was just a neurotypical classroom that had a few autistic and ADHD students wedged into it. The school didn't change the classroom, the school day, the learning modalities, or the expectations to make it a healthy place for these autistic and ADHD kiddos to learn and thrive. Nor did they make any effort for inclusion to go both ways, which would have looked like inviting neurotypical people into autistic modes of play and learning and communicating. Instead, they spent most of their energy trying to get these young autistic and ADHD kids to conform to the neurotypical norms of school, which, as we all know, don't work for many kids, but really don't work for those kids. I'm not knocking the idea of inclusion classrooms. I completely support the broad concept, but inclusion of disabled people without social transformation around us just puts the burden of change right back on us. For autistics, I know from very personal experience, this kind of inclusion can cause extreme shame and very real psychological damage. In my son's case, inclusion led directly to a severe nervous system burnout by the age of 5. In my case, it took about 2 decades before my first major burnout, but it still happened. So what if our goal isn't inclusion, but social transformation? After all, we live in a society sick with speed and transient attention, a normative culture that is trampling all of our nervous systems, autistic, neurotypical, ADHD, you name it. It's not serving most of us well at all. So I want to try this on. I want to include you, regardless of your relationship to autism, into the liberatory aspects of my autistic culture. I want to invite you, to include you in the slower pace of life that most autistic people need. I want to include you in having access to your passions as the center of your life if you chose. I want to include you in having access to pleasurable sensory experiences, cozy places to rest, the courage to say no instead of accepting an invitation that would stress your body or brain out too much. I want to include you in respecting your body's and brain's unique needs and limits, and in finding community with other people who share your brain wiring. I want to include you in the beautiful practice of what I call consensual info dumping which is where you ask permission to share about your passions in a long, delicious monologue to someone you trust. I want to include you in the soft textures, gentle lighting, silly singing, deep dive learning, beanbag throwing, therapy swinging, long afternoon snuggling under weighted blankets that are the norm in my autistic home. I want to include you in throwing out the capitalist lie that says you are only worthy if you are productive. I want to include you in the way my particular autistic brain pays exquisite attention to natural beauty, feels the personhood of every plant and animal and mushroom, dives deep into every passion that comes my way and teaches it forward. I want to include you in the moment when my son and 2 other little autistic boys were bouncing on our couch about 1.5 years ago, shouting the same nonsense word over and over, their joyful eyes looking straight ahead and not at each other, and not one adult stepped in to teach them social skills to play some other more correct way. I want to include you in the moment I told my boy, Mama's autistic too, how his smile lit up the room, how he threw his little arms around me, welcoming me home. There's a beautiful midrash, a rabbinic interpretation of a biblical verse about the revelation at Mount Sinai. The midrash goes that when God's voice came down from Sinai, it split into 70 different voices, and it reached each individual Israelite according to their own strength, their own capacity, their own needs. So today, I imagine that as the people saw that mountain, as it says in the Torah in Exodus, all smoke and lightning as revelation was happening, they were inspired to light their own campfires. And in the evenings after revelation, they gathered around those fires to interpret the Torah in such a way that it would serve the actual well-being of their brains and bodies, given each of their strengths and vulnerabilities. Here's to liberation for all of us. Thank you.
And now we get the icing on the cake. Shoshana is going to share some song with us.
Yeah, so I want to take questions and answers, but I figure first I'll sing a little.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shall I bring you tu guitarra? And
So this is exciting for me. I haven't performed in a long time. Oh, yeah.
exciting for us too.
My life looks really, who in this room has a life that looks very different than what you expected your life to be? My life looks really different. Right? I was a full-time pulpit rabbi. I had a baby. I was like, I'll go back to full-time pulpit work. Little knowing that I was autistic, that I would run smack into the very common experience of massive burnout for undiagnosed autistic women when we become mothers. So I don't lead services much anymore, though I love it. And my kiddo, who's got this survival drive for autonomy, doesn't often want me to sing, because if I just sing what I want, that's too threatening to him right now. So it's really nice to get to sing. I'm going to sing a song that is not my own. Well, sort of my own. So Dar Williams is a wonderful singer-songwriter who's very big when I was younger, and she either lives or lived out in Lexington. Oh, I'm just going to take a breath. Gotta keep them on. She has this beautiful song called The One Who Knows. You know that song? It's a song about parenting, and my parents sang it to me, and it's a real tearjerker of a parenting song. I'm going to sing it to you. But then what happened was I had my baby, and things got harder and harder, and I would sing this song and just weep, because you'll hear it, but the message of what it's saying was just so not the message that was true to our parenting experience into his life, because things were so hard. We didn't know how to support him. So I'm going to sing this song first, and you can hear it and hear how it would be applicable to many children and parents, but not applicable to all. And then I'll sing you my version of it. Long ago, I had a dream. You're the dream come true. If I had the world to give, I'd give it all to you. I'd take you to the mountains. I would take you to the sea. I'll show you how this life became a miracle to me. And you'll find a way. Take my hand until that day. So when they ask how far love goes, when my job's done, you'll be the one who knows. All the things you treasure most will be the hardest one. I will watch you struggle before the answers come, but I won't make it harder. I'll be there to cheer you on. I'll shine the light that guides you down the road you're walking on. And you'll find a way. Take my hand until that day. So when they ask how far love goes, when my job's done, you'll be the one who knows. Before the mountains call to you, before you leave this home, I will teach your heart to trust, as I must teach my own. But sometimes I will ask the moon where it shined upon you last, and shake my head and laugh and say it all went by so fast. And you'll find a way. Take my hand until the day. So when they ask how far love goes, when my job's done, you'll be the one who knows. So there was a year, thank you, Dar Williams, the one who knows. So there was a year when Abraham was in this deep burnout, and the psychological crisis is hard for absolutely anybody. To see it in a 5-year-old is heart-wrenching. To see one's child with their like so on the knife's edge of panic every single second, because we, knowing that part of this, he got there in large part because we got terrible advice about what he needed. And there would just be days where it was so hard, and I would sometimes go upstairs after he was asleep and sing that line and shake my head and laugh and say it all went by so fast. And I would just bawl because this wasn't going by fast at all. And the idea that he could, would someday leave the house, that there was going to be a day where my job was done, was just so beyond comprehension. But I needed a song, and I was really drawn to that song. So I rewrote the words. And this is the world debut of this version of Dar Williams' song.
Actually, before you start, Dean, can you turn on the original sound?
I did already. Did it change anything? Try again.
All right.
Go ahead.
Long ago, I had a dream. You're the dream come true. You're not what I expected, and I would give the world to you. I'd take you to the mountains, oh, let me take you to the sea. I want to show you how this life became a miracle to me. And we'll be okay. We'll take it step by step today. So when they ask how far love goes, when each day's done, you'll be the one who knows. I treasure and accept you just exactly as you are. It's you who've taught me who I am. We've learned and come so far. The world may try to change us, say we're weird or wrong or strange. And we'll just say we're different, perfect all the same. And we'll be okay. We'll take it step by step today. So when they ask how far love goes, when each day's done, you'll be the one who knows. The mountain may yet call to you, or you might not leave this home. And either way, I'll teach my heart to trust, your heart to trust, as I will teach my own. That there are oh so many ways to play this human game. And even when it's hard, we know it's worth it all the same. And we'll be okay. We'll take it step by step today. So when they ask how far do love goes, when each day is done, you'll be the one who knows. And we'll be we'll take it step by step today. So when they ask how far love goes, when my job's done, when my life's done, we'll be the ones who know. Thank you.
Shosana, can we get you to sing "The Tide is Rising"? This is a song that has become an enormous, huge anthem in the climate movement, the climate crisis movement, and also a song that I'll mention we sang at our Seder last year with our new significant other of the child of my brother and sister-in-law. I don't call him nephew or niece because they are non-binary. By the nephews. Did I just make up a word?
Nibbling is sometimes used.
Nibbling.
Yeah.
Nibbling. Okay. I look forward to hearing this song, which we know well in our family.
Yeah. So this is for a decade, my activism was almost entirely in the climate world. Motherhood eventually shifted that a bit, but I'm very gratified to know that Tide, which I wrote with my husband Yotam Schachter in 2015, continues to do work in the movement, even when I can't be as active as I wanted to be. And I'm really excited to say, and maybe you'll have me back next year, that a picture book is coming out of The Tide is Rising. I expanded it, so it has all the words you're familiar with, but then it also has kind of partisan like verses about the movement in between each of the singing verses. And it's being published by a Beaming Books, which is a wonderful publisher, the gorgeous illustrator. So it'll be out sometime, I'm sure, before April next year for Earth Day. So maybe I'll come and do a presentation of that. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. We are called to be. We are called to be. Sing along. This next verse is the task is mighty. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and
So are we.
Task is
That's
mighty,
another.
and so are
That is right.
we.
That
To be.
is-
We are called to be. The land is holy. The land is holy. And so are we. Holy. And so are we. The land is holy. And so are we. We are called to be. We are called to be. The storm is raging. The storm is raging. And so are we. The storm is raging. And so are we. The storm is raging. And so are we. Since we are called to be. We are called to be. The sun is shining. The sun is shining. And so are we. The sun is shining. So are we. The sun is shining. And so are we. Called to be. We are called to be. The world is ready. The world is ready. And so are we. The world is ready. And so are we. The world is ready. And so are we. We are called to be. Tide, the tide is rising, and so are we.
Me.
Tide is rising, and so are we.
Are we?
The tide is rising, and so are
So are we.
we. This is where we are called to be. We are called to be.
This
This
is
is
where
where
we are.
to be.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thanks to everyone listening.
Shoshana, thank you so much. And after one last song from Magpie, we will have a Q&A and a dialogue. Yeah. But this is the moment that I get to do the usual pitch, which is that we depend on you to keep this thing and this community and this place and this physical building going, to keep the elevator running and all the other things that need to be done. There is a basket in the back, as well as online, a website that has a donation function for credit card or PayPal. And that's all I will say, except to make just two more announcements. The first is you'll soon, if you're a member, receive a letter about our June 2nd annual meeting, where we celebrate the summer and the end of the season. Although a part of me is just sad that it's done, just because we've had such a rich year of incredible speakers and concerts and musicians. But join us on June 2nd. So we put in a new board for the next year. as well as have a celebration of each other. Also, just a moment to remember that this is the second anniversary of the murder of Shireen Abu Akleh, who was murdered in Jenin by the IDF. Shireen Abu Akleh presente, say I.
Aye.
Presente. And Magpie, are you there? I will spotlight
yes.
you for
We are
our
here.
last song. So glad that you could be with us this morning, and
Our
come see us in person. The sooner the better.
Sounds good to all of us.
Our
both of us.
pleasure. Thank you so much, Shoshana. And what a story, an amazing story. And we're just so pleased to be able to be
Here today.
virtually in your sphere anyway today. Wow.
This is a song that we wanted to sing. It's not ours, but our friend Rachel Autistics, who died of breast cancer, wrote it with our other friend Tom Prasada Rao.
What happened? Are you muted by any chance? We lost you.
Oh
Yes,
my
we
goodness.
were
There you are.
How did that
How
happen?
did you know?
Yes.
Okay, so sorry.
Go ahead, Greg. Introduce the song.
Just thank you to Shoshana for the incredible talk and music. And this song, as Terry was saying, written by our friend Rachel Bissix, who passed away many years ago. Wonderful songwriter, and she co-wrote this with our good friend Tom Prasada Rao, who is not very well these days.
However, this song
The song
resonates beyond everything.
Well,
It's called One Another.
when one voice meets another in a wave of harmony, when a woman heals a stranger with her careful empathy, when the night falls quiet to a million skyful stars, I know I am right there where you are. When one mind meets another in generosity, when a man holds his brother with his arms of sympathy, when the sun sets the sky into flames overhead, that's when I remember what you said. December's leafless trees reveal the mountain's shoulders. So can we shed the anger that keeps us from each other? Time is tugging, I can't fight it, no matter how I try, till I slow down and discover with the eyes of a child all the magic and wonder in a million grains of sand, and a whole world in a child's outstretched hand. There's a whole world in a child's outstretched hand.
Oh yeah.
Thank you.
When I was a child, I spoke as a child. My thoughts and my understandings were a child. Now that I am grown, I've set out on my own and I put away my childish things, except for that bear on the bed, the one by the pillow where I lay my head. It's been there to help me through, and I really want to keep it with me too. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. My thoughts and my understandings were a child's. Now that I am grown, I've set out on my own and I put away my childish things, except for those balls in the yard, the ones that I hit and kicked at really hard. They've been there to help me through, and I really want to keep them with me too. When I was a child, I spoke as a child. My thoughts and my understandings were a child's, except for my trusted friends, the ones who taught me how to make amends. They've been there to help me through, and I really, really, really want to keep them with me too. Where is that perfect place of faith and charity and hope where we may know God face to face, not dimly, not so dimly like through a telescope? When I was a child, I spoke as a child. My thoughts and understandings were a child's. Now that I am grown, I've set on my own and I've put away my childish things, except for that chalice flame, the one that burns without a name. It's been there to help me through, and I really, 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 really want to keep it with me too. 1 Corinthians 13, of course. It was my mother's favorite Bible verse or chapter, and for her birthday, she wanted all us kids, there were 6 of us, to memorize it. And so we memorized it. That was not quite the verse. That was a setting by Dylan Buston. And you can find it on one of his records as well as one of my records. It's a lovely song. I just really needed to sing that after hearing Shoshana this morning. So any questions? I have to run back onto the laptop. And I can't train the camera on anybody in the audience, but go ahead. We have some folks who want to share with us. Thanks and welcome.
I'm not quite sure how to formulate this, and I think it's probably an exceedingly strange question, but do you, as a rabbi, as a religious professional, quote unquote, do you find that neurodivergent and neurotypical people can have a different relationship to faith and can process theology differently? When I try to study theology, you know, as a layperson, primarily in the Christian tradition, I just get overwhelmed. I mean, there are so many denominations and theories, and you know, this thinker said this and that thinker said that, and with few exceptions, when I talk to typical lay people, even neurotypical clergy, they tend to be fine with the whole experience of, well, you know, my family grew up in this denomination or in this faith tradition, and now this is my faith tradition, and you know, this is where I am, this is where my 6 best friends are, you know. And neurodivergent people, we don't really have that. I mean, I very rarely do you meet a neurodivergent person who says, well, I'm interested in something because my parents are,
Yeah,
or
totally.
because my 3 best friends are. So I just wonder if there's sort of a difference between neurodivergent and
Well,
neurotypical process of theology.
thank you. That's a great question. I mean, I certainly don't want to make any sweeping statements, but I do know and feel very, you know, from my own experience, that a big piece of difference in autistic brains, and even amongst all of our diversity, is that we process information often with the details first, and then the big picture only comes later. So we get, that's one of the current theories on sort of what are like kind of some of the unifying features around autism. One is this theory of monotropism, which is more attention for fewer things at a time, which you can see in sensory and routine and how our attention is and how our passions run through us. But the other really big one that is being theorized now is called bottom-up processing, which is that we see details where other people see the gestalt. So I think that really speaks to this, where it's like somebody might, in an autistic brain, if we're presented with like, here's all these denominations and here's all these ideas, our brains will tend to process all of that information without seeing what might be the more relevant in that context, big picture that someone's trying to communicate to us. And then we can get really overwhelmed by all of those details, trying to understand each detail. Whereas I think it is easier for non-autistic brains to filter out the details that are irrelevant and then see the big picture. And it's hard for any of us, and autistics especially, for autistic folks, most of us, it's hard to focus on something deeply that isn't attached to a special interest of some kind. So depending on how the religion is framed, like it can just be hard to land fully inside of living in it, caring about it, like if it's not connected to this core sense of who we are. And for me, Judaism and studying it in rabbinics was I didn't know I was autistic, but it was a special interest for about 14 years. And then I could feel it leaving my body. Not that I'm not still Jewish and not that I'm not still a rabbi, but the way that it occupies place in my head and in my attention is completely different than it was when I was in rabbinical school. I now have different special interests that are at the center.
Angie. Welcome.
Hey, hi. So I am Angie Wildman. I am also autistic. So can you hear me with the speaker? Okay. So I have been nervous about voting for Jill Stein because I'm not trying to bash her at all, but I don't know if any of you have heard she's said that she's suggested sometimes that vaccines might be toxic, even though she doesn't say so. And she had said something about like how Wi-Fi causes disease and kids should spend less time on screens. And, you know, I like how you brought up screen time and that, you know, a lot of leftists are constantly told, you know, don't put down your phone and your TV, but for some kids, it might not work. Now, I myself, I prefer to be outdoors, but I also spend a lot more time online than some people in the left think I should be.
Yeah, there's a great, thanks for that. I cannot speak to Jill Stein. I'm personally definitely voting for Biden regardless of anything.
Me too.
It's gotta not have the other guy. But so I can't speak to Jill Stein, but I can definitely speak to the screen time piece, which is that a lot of the work that I do is around look at your specific body and brain and see what helps your specific body and brain or your child's specific body and brain. Instead of saying screens are bad or screens are good, it's just what role are they playing in this particular person's life? And for some folks, they're dysregulating in general, or particular kinds of screen usage is dysregulating and or addictive in a bad way. For my child, unlimited screen time is, I have a whole post on my Instagram of that it's like a wheelchair for him. It's an accommodation. It helps him access so much more of life. And because he has unlimited access to YouTube and Minecraft, he can, or playing on my phone, he can then store up enough regulation and energy in his body to go out of the house and see people and engage in the broader life. Whereas if we were on that train of no, screens are bad, every waking minute would be, he'd still be in burnout, first of all. Second of all, every waking minute would be a struggle and he would have no energy to engage in the rest of life. So a lot of it is about watching what specifically works for you. And then remembering that whether it was comic books or playing cards or like whatever thing that kids are into, every culture, every generation will have the boogeyman of what's terrible for children. And it's usually, there's such, I don't remember who said this first, this is not my teaching, but it's like society tends to scapegoat onto some new piece of technology, all of the fear we have about technological change. And we scapegoat that onto how children are engaging with things. And it is sometimes true. I'm not like, yay, everyone be on screens all the time. That's not good for everyone, but it can be really good for some. And we just have to keep our eyes on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Angie.
Hi.
Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, my name is St. Louis, and I was here. I got here a little bit late. Did you go over the process of how you became aware of when you thought you might be autistic, and what was the like if you go over that process?
How did I figure it out? It was this very funny, for me, it was a process of I was doing some memoir writing and trying to figure myself out. It was very like, you can't make this stuff up. I was literally trying to write a book about myself because I needed to figure myself out. So it was like a research project on myself. Talk about being autistic. It was like, my husband says I'm one of my own special interests. I'm like, who am I? And as I was trying to figure that out, I was trying to write about how I had started to identify as being a highly sensitive person. And as I was looking up more about highly sensitive person, I found this whole rabbit hole on the internet, which is essentially like the whole highly sensitive person thing is a bit of a crock. And it's mostly high masking autistic women who are then told you're just highly sensitive. And when you look at what Elaine Aron, who coined the whole highly sensitive person thing, says or said, I think she may now disavow it, about autism, it's extraordinarily pathologized. And she's like, highly sensitive people are not, they don't have autism, as though autism is this terrible thing. And she's like differentiating between all those poor, actually autistic people and all the highly sensitive people. So essentially, in the autistic circles I run in, highly sensitive person is kind of like, I do know some HSPs who I would say definitely fit that category and are not autistic, for sure. But in the most part, that's what led me. I was like, hey, if you think you're highly sensitive, check out this list of traits, of actual autistic traits, and see. And then it kind of all came together. So for me, it was an actual light bulb moment. And I walked home and I could barely speak because I was in so much re-looking back at the entirety of my life. And I was a journaler. Like, I am so like seeker, you know, what am I? Who am I? I don't make sense to myself. And then it was like in this one moment, I got this word and I went home and I was in the kitchen and my husband said, you look like you saw a ghost. And I said, I think I'm autistic. And his whole face, because I thought he was going to be like, that's ridiculous. And instead, it looked like our entire marriage all of a sudden made sense. And it was a really profound and intense moment for him. It's like, wow. So I did. I was self-diagnosed just for 9 months. And essentially yes, I did. But the caveat is I really only did because I knew I'd be speaking, writing, and doing Instagram publicly. And I knew that there are plenty of people, because of how I present, who would be like, that's ridiculous, you're not autistic. So I knew I needed the medical diagnosis. But for other adults in my position who come to me, because I do this coaching now, I generally say, only pursue one if you have such intense imposter syndrome that you need it. It does nothing for you as an adult unless you need disability benefits. And that's a huge battle to get, because it's not like, oh, now you have funding or therapy or accommodations. Like, you don't. You can fight with your work, maybe, and maybe you can force them to, but it can sometimes, anyway, it's a big deal. So self-diagnosis is valid because it also costs thousands and thousands of dollars to get a medical diagnosis. But it didn't for me, because I found a place that specializes specifically in women where they're pioneering a new assessment tool. And as part of the pioneering, they're only charging a fraction. So I was able to afford it. It's called Wilderwood. It's in New Mexico. So I just wrote up a whole story of my life. I did a bunch of testing with them on Zoom, including their new test. My husband wrote up a thing about me. You know, at that point, I knew so much about autism that I knew exactly what I was writing would be relevant. But anyway, that's how I got mine.
Shoshana, will you tell us where the best place to find you online? I know you're a prolific author and memoirist and advocate.
Yeah, I've got a website, rabbishoshana.com. And from there you can, and I have that same handle on Instagram, where I am really present and doing a lot of education and posting about PDA specifically. And I have a practice for adult autistics, specializing in PDA, but I work with anybody. And I work with a lot of parents of PDA autistic kids.
All right.
Yeah.
Charlie and Joan.
Sorry, Angie has one question.
Yeah, I had a
Wait. Hold on, Angie. I just
sorry,
put
Angie.
somebody online, and then Angie.
Sorry, that was my
Sorry.
bad.
So I listen to TikTok occasionally, and for a while I was getting a lot of people talking about their autism. I found it very interesting, and then for some reason I put it down for a little while and came back, and I don't get as many. I don't know if you have any comment on either of those aspects.
There's a huge movement on social media of people educating about autism from the perspective of being autistic. It's this massive movement that I'm now part of. I'm guessing it's just an algorithm thing that somehow the gods of TikTok thought you didn't like that content anymore, but it's very much still there. And if you're on Instagram, you can check me out at Rabbi Shoshana.
Angie, let me give you the microphone.
I'll take Angie, and then do you have a question?
So, I think that I might have PDA path, not the, I won't say, sorry if I said,
pervasive
but
drive for autonomy.
because sometimes a lot of its everyday tasks are very, very overwhelming for me. So, I followed you on Instagram, and if I could like maybe communicate with you about the advice you have, because that would really help me where I am. And just so you know, I am in a assisted living facility with Jewish family and children's service.
great.
And yeah, they have some of their own like political issues, but I have actually helped them, understand our point of view.
Great. That's awesome, Angie. Question. up
Thank
here?
you, Angie.
Did you have a
Oh,
question? Yeah.
Here,
Oh,
there you go.
comment.
Yeah.
Hi, Judy.
I'm Judy, and I just want to thank you. First of all, I don't have a question because you've answered all my questions.
Okay.
Because I work with neurodivergent. I've worked with kids with dyslexia forever, for 20 or 30 years. So
Amazing.
all of what you've said about psychiatry, about every sort of thing, follows absolutely through all of that.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happened. And I just spent a day yesterday with someone who's in this problem right now with IEPs. I mean, you know
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's extraordinary. And I just have to tell you how, I mean, your courage is amazing.
Oh,
I
thank
think
you.
to have come out, and done this, and you just are so articulate about it, and people just need to hear it on
Thank
all of these. It
Yeah,
doesn't
on all
matter
of
whether
it.
it's autism, whatever the heck it is.
Yeah.
But
Thank
it's
you.
all.
I
out
think of
there.
it as a human rights and a peace movement.
Yeah.
Because we are literally, abuse is a big word, but like
No, but
harming
that's-
children in the name of helping them and messing people up for life.
Right.
And
Right.
it's a real,
And the schools,
yeah, and it's
schools
utterly
won't-
preventable.
Yeah, and they won't buy into anything
Yeah.
new because they've already
Yeah.
spent millions of dollars. on
Schools are like
whatever
the
particular
Titanic.
thing.
It
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
move.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
it's really intense.
But thank you very much.
Absolutely.
It was a beautiful Mother's Day.
Thank you.
Beautiful Mother's Day.
Thank
Um,
you.
I would like to hold up Stevie McNeil, who is here very often. He's very shy and autistic, and has had just a horrible experience throughout his life with his family and with his especially with his father, and with dealing with homelessness after his mother died and his father kicked him out of the house, and then healthcare for the homeless kind of brought him back, and he's now in a group setting. Steve has been a member of this church for longer than anyone. I think maybe Tilly Teixeira got married here in 1954 or something, but Stevie has been coming here since the late 70s, when we met in Morse Auditorium, and always here. And the challenge and the question is how to make this place be a place that's welcome for all, just like our slogans say, including people who are of different things that are considered marginal or whatever, and how do we embrace them and hold them up and welcome them.
Beautiful.
The young man who wears glasses, so short, thin, shy.
He was a little guy who's very into things that are not made in China, and who's very into the VIN numbers on automobiles.
Speaking of autistic people, my little boy is anxious for me to come home. This is about his nervous system tolerance for the length of time I can be away. So I'm going to grab a lift. I'm so grateful to have been with all of you. Please find me online. I'm available. Dean, love you. So grateful for all that you do and all that you are.
Shoshana, love you too. and hugs to all of your very talented and very wonderful family.
Thank you.
And Shoshana's anxious to get home. We're anxious to have lunch, aren't we? We are going to go over and out. And again, thanking Magpie for being with us this morning. You just look so great. You sound so great, and you pick just songs that speak to every occasion and every cause that we espouse here, and every challenge. Thank you, Terry and Greg, and
Our
thank you
pleasure.
to everybody.
Our pleasure. You are a gift.
Do good work. Have a
Thank
great
you.
week. Enjoy the beautiful weather finally here. Get out in the garden. That's where I'm going to be.
Us too.
And we love you all. Shoshana, keep writing. I think of that quote from Annie Lamott. If you survived your childhood, you'll be able to write for 2 whole lifetimes. And thank you, everybody. And Luis Guzman has a beautiful lunch prepared for us. If you're online, come see us someday in person. Well, actually, only for the next 2 weeks. We'll be taking our summer break. We'll have some events during the summer that we will announce as they come your way. Get on our mailing list if you're not there. And that's enough. We're done. Over and out. We have
Thank you, Dean.
Bye.
Thank you,
one
everyone.
last announcement here.
On June 2nd, is that going to be at the regular time, 11 o'clock?
I believe it'll be at noon. We will announce it, and it'll be. I think we're going to have a short program before, maybe a brunch, and then noon. But we will figure that out at